FFF lore. The FNAF family film timeline, from what we know, is short and simple to understand. Let's start from the beginning. Even before the first episode, in 1986, Saginaw, Michigan, Fredbear and Buns Shakir got married, which significantly changed their lives. Buns worked at a pizzeria chain, while Fred was a food truck driver. They were a happy couple and had 4 children in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. Chica, Mangle, Bonnie, and Foxy. However, around the time of their 4th child's birth, their relationship began to falter, and tensions escalated on the day Freddie was born. On February 29, 2020, their arguments intensified, financial difficulties arose, and they welcomed a new child, Freddie. Fortunately, Fred had a job interview that day, which could potentially lift the family out of poverty. Unfortunately, the job had a no-kids policy, forcing the parents to make a difficult decision. On March 4, they made the choice to send their children away. TLDR, Fredbear and Buns Shakir got married in 2016 and had 4 children, Chica, Mangle, Bonnie, Foxy, and eventually Freddie. However, their marriage faced challenges, and on February 29, 2020, their arguments escalated, leading to financial difficulties. Consequently, on March 4, they made the difficult decision to send their children away. Note: after the children were removed from the household, Bonnie was the only one who chose to separate from Fredbear. Lastly, the coronavirus didn't exist in their universe. Episode 001. Following the events of March 4, they spent nearly 4 years raising Freddie and having Bonnie split in the brutal elements of Saginaw, Michigan. They wander the streets, enduring freezing winters, starvation, and the harsh realities of homelessness. To survive, they resort to begging for scraps, a period that severely traumatizes the young siblings and hardens Freddie into a protective, albeit highly aggressive and stubborn, younger brother figure. Their luck changes drastically during a rare peaceful spring day. A man named Santa Claus, a chill and charming man, comes from the store buying a table, pities them and ends up taking them in as his children until he finds them a home. TLDR, following the events of March 4, they spend nearly 4 years raising Freddie and having Bonnie split. Their luck changes drastically when a man named Santa Claus pities them and ends up taking them in as his children. Episode 002. Upon arriving at the old man's residence, the siblings experience massive culture shock. They are completely awed by the basic comforts of a stable domestic environment, such as having a roof over their heads and a couch to sit on. The old man immediately steps into the role of dad. Though he establishes a safe and loving household, he gives them a tour and decides it is time to introduce the children to the deepest and most volatile secret of the household: his pet, a decaying, aggressive blue creature named Dark Souls, represented by a Huggy Wuggy plush. That is confined a very important lore character. TLDR, upon arriving at the old man's residence, he gives them a tour and decides it is time to introduce the children to the deepest and most volatile secret of the household: his pet, Dark Souls, represented by a Huggy Wuggy plush. That is confined a very important lore character. Note: Dark Souls killed Santa's wife by accident, but Santa captured him for revenge. Episodes 003 to 014. Phase 2/Dark Souls era. The family after episode 002 go through regular family struggles such as potty mouth problems, relationship problems, and even body switches. However, after episode 007, Freddie had a new tie and started acting strangely. After episode 008, the house they were once in got burned down and settled into a pizzeria in which they would do shows and performances. As it turned out, the whole pizzeria was decided to be a trap set up by Dark Souls, and in the 10th episode, Dark Souls put his plan into action, luring, capturing, and killing the customers there that day. Finally, he captured the FNAF children and proposed an ultimatum to Santa. However, Santa chose to fight Dark Souls, and clone Freddie helped defeat Dark Souls and left him to burn and freed the real Freddie. Note: Phase 1, Episode 810 explained Dark Souls' revenge arc. After Episode 8's fire, Dark Souls escaped and reunited with his family faction, the Dark Order. They formed the plan to capture Freddie and clone him through a process called band collapsing, which we'll get to later. Episodes 15 to 20. Phase 3, the Chucky era. Following the defeat of Dark Souls and the destruction of the trap pizzeria, Santa and the freed FNAF children look to rebuild their lives away from the shadow of the Dark Order. They repair themselves as a family and build the family they always wanted. They even find a new pizzeria and rebrands into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and being well known in their city. However, their newfound peace is short-lived. The family's franchise is being challenged by a Chuck E. Cheese's pizza location down the street, and now they have a competitor. Fast forward to episode 017. They find out Chucky's is doing better than them. Freddy gets angry and starts the Chucky vs. Freddy's war by beating Chucky up, which then gets him arrested. In episode 018, Freddy rips the Honorable Judge Barron's soul out of his body and is now sentenced to death. Now he's unknowingly under the Dark Order's control, which won't be revealed until episode 020. The family sees this on the news and wants to raise money for his bail. Foxy, however, breaks Freddy out of jail, dodging tons of security. When he is outside of Freddy's cell, a guard almost kills those two, but Santa comes and saves them, knocking the guard out. In the most recent episode, 019, Chuck E. Cheese vs. FNAF, Santa forms a plan to bring them down. They sneak in and attack one by one. First, Chucky overpowers Chica and Mangle. Second, Freddy and Foxy smashes toy Chica in a trash compactor, and Bonnie strangles Barry, Purple from Rainbow Friends. Santa calls them over and explains that the cops would be here any moment. Once they heard sirens, they said their goodbyes and crawl in the tunnel. Santa then seals the hole and sacrifices himself. He then gets captured by the police, the Dark Order's prison service, which mimics the police and does experiments on people like Clone Freddy. TLDR. Following the defeat of Dark Souls and the destruction of the Trap Pizzeria, Santa and the freed FNAF children look to rebuild their lives. However, their newfound peace is short-lived when a Chuck E. Cheese location opens near them. Episode 017. They find out Chucky's is doing better than them. Freddy gets angry and beats Chucky up, which then gets him arrested. The family sees this on the news and wants to raise money for his bail. Foxy, however, breaks Freddy out of jail, dodging tons of security. They both manage to escape and goes home to discuss the plan to defeat Chuck E. Cheese. They sneak in and attack one by one. Santa finds a hole that leads to a tunnel that the children uses to escape through. Once they heard sirens, they said their goodbyes and crawl in the tunnel. Santa then seals the hole and sacrifices himself. Note: this is the current and in finished era. I have to finish 020, Band Fracture, and 021. The remix. A band is a channel of links that acts as the fabric of the universe, and if that fabric gets tampered, I'll change that past to make up for the present. If they're destroyed, it fills the hole by either making a new different timeline or cutting the broken fabric out and splicing the two timelines together. Breaking or distorting the timeline breaks in half and creates two until the gap is ignored or healed.